I'm reading 4 books, 4 fairy tales, and 2 short stories this month. Hi, I'm Quinn Moon. I'm a queer writer and I am a queer academic, and this is my September TBR. I am a member of 2 local book clubs, and one of them is with a local public library. And for that one, we are reading Days Without End by Sebastian Barry. The glare is not too bad. This is actually a queer western, and it takes place during the Indian-American War and the American Civil War. So it follows 2 soldiers as they try to find meaning in the world, and they try to find the humanity that just does not seem to be present in the horrible circumstances that they keep getting put in due to the fact that they have no real skill set except soldiering. So it was a really surprising read, especially because I did not expect this to be queer, but it was very just low-key queer. It wasn't, really loud about it. I also think this gives me Cormac McCarthy, but it doesn't kill your soul, so I appreciate that. I still felt okay after reading this. Cormac McCarthy's books really weigh on my soul, so this one I'm excited for. I've read quite a bit of it already. It's really good. The book I'm reading for my Logan Square book club is The Crying of Lot 49. This is very small. It's by Thomas Pynchon, I guess? Pinkin? I've never read anything by this author, and I will say I tried reading it a few days ago when I was tired and it was late and immediately got lost, so not advised. This is also satire and I think postmodern, so it definitely is sometimes kind of stream of consciousness, so I've had to really be purposeful in reading this one. I've been able to research the motifs to be able to follow along and know what to be aware of, because sometimes I'm reading a story and if it's a satire, I want to understand what the author is trying to say. So this book, very short, Logan Square Book Club. I've read a couple of pages already and it is quite dense and I have quite a bit to say about it. I get the satire, but it's frustrating and giving me emotions, which I guess is the point of this. This is a book I'm reading just on my own. It's actually been ongoing for a minute. I haven't finished it just because of how dense the subject matter is. And now that I've gotten this far, I realize it's actually going to be really good for some of the lore in my writing, so I have to go back and reread it, but that's okay. And that book is The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking by Katie Mack. I really love the humor, how approachable this is. This has been ongoing for a minute, but because it's nonfiction, I can kind of read a chapter and it's pretty much self-contained. So I'm really taking advantage of that. But now that I see how this is applicable to my writing, I'm taking much more rigorous notes. And I've actually added a small index at the beginning for myself so that I know where are the questions I need to go back and answer, because this is pretty important for one of the books that I'm writing. So this is going to be in progress. I'm going to reread it just so I can think more critically. Since this is my first time reading it, the first 100 pages were quite heavy and difficult for me to get through. I had just started reading about physics and cosmology and astrophysics. So trying to grasp time on a cosmological scale and trying to grasp the state of matter and existence at a level that it was at the beginning of creation and time was a bit of an abstract, was very, very abstract actually. It was very abstract. But since I've adjusted, I've read a lot more physics since then. I've read articles. I've actually read articles that Katie Mack has posted, or research papers, I forget. But I've read more of her stuff. I've read a couple of other physics authors. It is much easier. And this is an extremely approachable and consumable book. I just wanted to actually be able to see it and envision it as I read, which was kind of too much for my puny brain. So no fault on the author. It was completely a me problem, but it's a great book. It's a ride. I might not finish it this month. It might just be something ongoing simply because I will have to reread it again, but that is okay. The 4th book I'm reading, I actually don't have a physical copy of. I'm reading it on audiobook, so I'll just put a picture somewhere here. That book is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is a book that I'm reading with my sisters. We call it Las Viejitas Book Club. So it's just me and my sisters picking a book. This is the first time that we read it together, and it was picked by the sister that doesn't typically read. So we were a little skeptical about it. The book is clearly amazing. I really love seeing old Chicago. I love seeing how Michelle Obama grew up. I love seeing Chicago through her eyes as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager, and seeing the circumstances that shaped one of the most influential women of our time. So it's been a heavy read, but it's been very good. I'm really thankful my sister picked it. We're actually going to talk about it end of September. I'm about 30% of the way through. I think she's like past half. One of my other sisters past half. I don't think the others even started it. But I am reading Becoming by Michelle Obama, and I'm really excited. One of the short stories I want to get through this month, since we're getting into spooky season, is Olalla by Robert Louis Stevenson. I don't know if I'm even saying that correct. The first time I read it, I didn't get vampires, but then I did a little bit more research just to, because I like, I like researching. I got supplemental context, and apparently it was like one of the early vampire stories. And that is what prompted me to read, these are both rereads, but this prompted me to read the other short story I'm reading for spooky season, which is Carmilla by J. Sheridan LeFanu. I probably butchered that. But Carmilla, I have read this before. I made some annotations. They're probably not great. It's okay. We've come a long way. Everything I read is somehow queer, has queer extensions, has queer applications. So when I read Carmilla, I was like, okay, I am seriously just pushing this agenda too much. There's no way that in the year of 1872, some guy is writing about lesbian vampires. I'm clearly off my rocker, so I stopped reading, did a little bit of research. No, straight up lesbian vampires. So I'm like, hey, I'm here for it all day. Just did not expect it. So it was very fun. I'm really excited to reread it now that I know what to expect. So I'll be reading those two short stories. At some point, I'm also going to reread Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because I really like it. I might even do a story about it at some point. I don't know. I might write something about it. I haven't decided. But Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde just haunts me. I might read that next month. That's a perfect spooky one. We'll see. I'm trying to see if I keep with vampires. The reason I had to go get the book. I had thought I had it here. Did not. The reason that I'm reading vampire stuff is I'm finally reading Dracula. So this is going to be an interesting ride. I'm reading this with one sister, the one that loves to read, for October. So I'm going to start it this month, going into next month. And odds are I'm going to have to divide this up between the 2 months. So I'm going to do the book 1 month and then the context and supplemental stuff the next month. I like reading Norton Critical Editions because of the context that I don't usually get. And I've been reading Norton Critical Editions for a minute now, and I really wanted to get the supplemental texts, the subtexts, even critiques if I have time to get around to it. I don't want to dedicate more than 2 months of reading for this, but it's 575 pages, pretty on par for novels of Norton Critical Editions. But that's why I want to stick with the vampire vibe. But we'll see. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde might totally just blow us out of the water. Because there are also references here. Context, criticism, reviews, and reactions. So we'll see if any of that points me in the right direction of what to read next. So, also reading Dracula. So I guess that's 5. I guess it's 5 books. 5 books and 2 short stories. And 4 fairy tales. So for the fairy tales I'm reading, I think we're all familiar with the big Barnes & Noble, like Grimm's Fairy Tales anthologies. But because I study myth and fairy tales and folklore, I obviously have 2 Norton Critical Editions of fairy tales. And thankfully I did, because the fairy tales that I've chosen to read for this month are sort of themed around spooky season and one of the other books that I read last month that I really enjoyed, The Master and Margarita. So I'm reading 2 fairy tales specifically to accompany that book for this month and like reviews and stuff. So I had to bust out my Norton Critical Editions because the 2 spooky ones are not in the anthology, like the friendly anthology that everybody buys. So I'm reading Rumpelstiltskin for the Master and Margarita companion reads, as well as Puss in Boots. So I've read Rumpelstiltskin, Puss in Boots. I'm not sure how I'm going to structure those videos yet, but I'm definitely reading those two. And then for spooky season, I'm reading The Juniper Tree, which is morbid as hell. And I'm reading The Maiden Without Hands. Definitely not exactly what you would want, you know, your child just picking up randomly. So I'm glad that I had the Nori Critical Editions, because they are also not in both. This one doesn't have them, this one does. Probably has to do with the year of publication and when they're like, yo, these are kind of scary. Because even this one doesn't have two other ones that I'm lining up for October, so I gotta go track those down, but that's for a separate video. Anyways, so those are the 4 fairy tales: Rumpelstiltskin, Puss in Boots, The Juniper Tree, and The Maiden with No Hands. Which, The Maiden Without Hands, just, doesn't that just sound, it just sets the mood. Okay, that is all I'm gonna be reading for the month of September. I say it like it's menial reading. I do have a job. So, it's gonna be interesting to see how much I get through. The fairy tales thankfully are pretty quick, but the research is kind of what's gonna make that a heavy task. I'm excited for it though. So we'll see how this month goes. I'll do my wrap up and let everybody know how it goes. What are you reading for this month? I think I'm posting this a little late, but that's okay. I'm still in the middle of reading and I am behind. So it's not like I've actually read too much. Thank you for stopping by and let me know what you're reading this month. Bye.